Hello students, continuing with the chapter Sexual Reproduction in Flowering Plants, we will continue with subtopic pistil, that is also called the megasporophyll, and the ovules. We will specially study the ovules, which are also called as the megasporangium. Now this is something very basic about this chapter and very important from boards as well as NEET point of view, because many questions are targeted towards this topic. So starting with the first, the pistil or the carpel, as you have been studying in the other classes, in your previous classes, you know that pistil consists of ovary, style and stigma. So there are three parts of the pistil: ovary, style and stigma. Ovary, which is later going to form the fruit, and inside ovary there are ovules which are going to turn into seed, that is post fertilization. Now this ovary we call as pistil, pistil, which we also call as a megasporophyll. This pistil is megasporophyll. We have already discussed in previous classes about the origin of these words. That is, the phill word is leaf, and these are the megaspore bearing leaf. So basically the megasporophylls are the megaspore bearing leaves, bearing inside these ovules, which are called the megasporangium, because again same thing, because these are sporangia or structures which are going to bear the megaspores later. And these megaspores are nothing but formed meiotically. They are haploid. They are the first cells of the female gametophyte. So they will start with what is called as female gametophyte, just like you have studied about the pollens or the microspores, which begin with the generation called male gametophyte, and they are all haploid. The gametophytes are what? They are always haploid. That's right. Now ovules have various shapes. Now we will discuss some of the ovule shapes, and starting with that, the first is anatropous. Anatropous ovule is the most common, that is found in angiosperms. 82% angiosperm families. It is given in your NCERT also that 82% of your angiosperm families have anatropous ovules. Now these ovules are basically 180-degree curved. These ovules are 180-degree curved. So as you can see that there is a funicle, which is basically the stalk of the ovule. Funicle, the stalk of the ovule. And with respect to funicle, if you see, this ovule is turned 180 degrees. Like this is the funicle, and if this is the ovule has turned like this. So this part is now micropyle, and that is very close to funicle. The micropyle is the entry point from where the pollen tube can enter, that is the opening of the ovule basically, and opposite to the micropyle is chalaza. So these are the two ends of the ovule. And let us discuss the other parts, like hilum. Funicle attached to the ovule at a point which is called hilum. So ovule will break at hilum. So it is a point of attachment of the funicle with the ovule, hilum. And raphe, that is particularly a kind of lengthwise attachment of the funicle with the body of the ovule, raphe. Okay, so what is this ovule basically having inside? A tissue. It's, as you know, ovule is megasporangium, so it is part of the sporophytic generation, and it is diploid. The entire ovule, pistil, etc., these are all diploid. Now this ovule inside will have a tissue called nucellus. Nucellus is a tissue which basically is sporogenous and nutritive in function. So what is the function of nucellus? It is nutritive. Nutritive means that it is going to provide the nourishment to the female gametophyte, which is going to develop in this ovule in future. Right now it is not there, but it's going to develop in future. And although in the diagrams you see that we show this embryo sac like this, even in NCERT also this embryo sac is shown, but it is going to develop at a later stage. So not initially. Initially this area will be completely occupied by the nucellus, and it is a diploid, sporogenous, nutritive tissue, and the nutrition is going to be used for what? development of the female gametophyte itself, that is called as the embryo sac. Now, this shape of the ovule, which is 180-degree curved anatropous ovule, is the most common. What are the other possible shapes? Though these are not mentioned in NCERT, but we can have a quick look at what are the other shapes possible. The second I'm writing here is orthotropous. The second is orthotropous ovule. This is straight. ये ओव्यूल एकदम स्ट्रेट है. स्ट्रेट मीन्स कि इसमें फ्यूनिकल, चलाजा और जो माइक्रोपाइल है ये तीनों एक ही लाइन में है. So when the micropyle, chalaza and the funicle are in one line, we call it as orthotropous. And you find it in gymnosperms. Entire gymnosperms had the orthotropous ovule, so that makes it very primitive. Orthotropous ovule will be there, hence considered primitive. Polygonum. Among angiosperms, it is polygonum, which also has orthotropous ovule. Next one, hemianatropous. As the name suggests, hemi. These each word have their own meaning. Like ortho means straight and hemi means half. So hemianatropous, half of anatropous, which means it is 90 degree. That's right, because anatropous was 180 degrees, so this is 90 degree curved ovule. So it is at right angles. It's like this. So this is the funicle and this is the ovule. So this micropyle and the funicle, they would be at right angles, 90 degrees. So you can view this ovule and it is found in ranunculus. Ranunculus. The next in line, campylotropous ovule. You can refer to the notes or the books side by side. Campylotropous, if you can see, it is also 90 degree ovule, but its micropyle bends down. So you can see how this micropyle is bending down. So this is found in many Brassica species. Fine. Then still next, that is the amphitropous. The next one, amphi. Now the word amphi, many times we come across, it means that it is both or two. Anything to do with dual, both, two is amphi. Now amphitropous here, interestingly, is again 180 degree curved ovule, just like anatropous. But here we find even the inside, this is the embryo sac. Basically, I have drawn inside is embryo sac, and embryo sac is also curved and it's said to be horseshoe shaped. The embryo sac is horseshoe shaped. So this is found in poppy. Poppy, the Papaver somniferum, a very important plant, poppy, from where we get the latex called opium, which is used in various medicines and also a narcotic drug, opium. So this gives this poppy plant, from its fruit walls we get the latex, which is called opium. Then next in the shapes, the next is, as you can see, this is ovule called Cercinotropous. Cercinotropous ovule is still more interesting because this is 360 degree curved. Now 360 degree means that the entire funicle, as you can see, takes a round around the ovule. It's completely covering the ovule, and that's why if you see the ovule inside, it looks like almost straight, just like orthotropous. But basically it is the funicle which is covering it, because the ovule has taken the complete turn, 360 degree. Cercinotropous found in cacti, Opuntia cacti. So finishing this part, that is the shapes of ovule, we go to the terms. There are certain terms with respect to ovule, we can discuss those. Like first, tenuinucellate, there's a term, tenuinucellate. Now this term refers to the ovules which have very ill-developed or poorly developed nucellus. अगर न्यूसेलस अच्छा डेवलप नहीं है, कम है, तो उसे कहते हैं tenuinucellate ovules, and these are found in the Gamopetalae group of dicots. I hope you remember what a Gamopetalae. Gamopetalae group means where the petals are fused, and according to Bentham and Hooker's classification, there are different families which are placed in Gamopetalae. Solanaceae was one of those you have studied in class 11th. So such Gamopetalae of dicots will have the tenuinucellate ovule. The next is Crassinucellate. Crassinucellate, which means more developed or well developed nucellus, is found among the polypetally of the dicots. Now polypetally, where the petals are free, so such many groups or families you find under polypetally, and one of those is Fabaceae. Have already come across in 11th, so that will come in this. And apart from the polypetally of the dicots, the crassinucellate also includes the monocots. And the next terms that we see are with respect to, these all terms that you see are with respect to integument, whether it's unitegmic, bitegmic, ategmic, tritegmic. So these terms are related to integument. First is unitegmic. What is unitegmic? When there is only one integument. The integument, coming back to this diagram, integument is the outer covering of ovule. So if you see only one, then it's unitegmic. If you see two, like if I draw one more here, like this, so you may call this as now bitegmic. Unitegmic ovules are more primitive because they were found in the gymnosperms. So orthotropous in shape and unitegmic are the characteristic of the gymnosperms. Among angiosperms, unitegmic is found in many of these gamopetally of the dicots. Unitegmic again found among the gamopetally of the dicots, for example, Solanaceae. Then bitegmic. The bitegmic ovules are those which are having two integument, and these are more advanced because these are found in monocots, and among dicots these are found in the polypetally group of dicots, for example, Fabaceae. Then ategmic. Now ategmic are those which do not have any integument at all, and such ovules are found in Loranthus, Santalum, and these are the parasitic plants. Tritegmic. Now tritegmic basically is what? Now it's a bitegmic ovule, but the outer covering, around that outer integument you find still another layer which is called as aril. In tritegmic ovule, the third is aril. A-R-I-L, aril. Now many times this aril is a very nutritious and tasty fruit, and you have eaten a lot. For example, I'm sure like in lychee, the lychee chinensis, the lychee fruit that you eat, is basically a nut, and it's the seed that you throw away, and the white part which you eat, that white part is aril in lychee. And the outer fruit cover, that reddish part which you throw away again, is nothing but pericarp. In the lychee, what you eat is aril. Apart from lychee, lychee is very well known example, but apart from lychee, if you refer to your notes or other books, you will see that its aril is also found in some other plants like Asphodelus, which is a Liliaceae member. Then you will also find it in Inga dulce, a plant called Inga dulce. इसको हिंदी में कई बार जंगली जलेबी भी कहा जाता है, और इसके भी फ्रूट्स खाए जा सकते हैं, इसके एरिल को खाते हैं. और इसके अलावा मिरिस्टिका इज अ नटमेग. मिरिस्टिका जिसको कॉमनली नटमेग कहा जाता है, और ये एक स्पाइस कॉन्डिमेंट की तरह कुकिंग में यूज किया जाता है. सो दैट इज कॉल्ड मिरिस्टिका. तो इस तरह से कई एरिल के एग्जाम्पल्स है, बट द मोस्ट फेमस एंड द मोस्ट वेल नोन इज lychee chinensis. Then we can also see a term called caruncle. Now this caruncle is found in castor. Caruncle is found in castor. Castor is Ricinus communis. Scientific name is Ricinus communis. And in castor, what do you find? In castor or in caruncle, it is basically the outgrowth of outer integument towards the micropyle. Now we have to understand the difference between aril and caruncle. Now let's see. In case of aril, you can make it a point that in aril, the outer, this aril is nothing but an outgrowth of base of ovule or funicle. Base of ovule or funicle. So it's basically, aril is like this. Whereas, what is caruncle? This I have drawn as aril. What is caruncle? Caruncle is the outgrowth of the integument towards micropyle. This is the micropyle, this is chalaza. So in case of caruncle, this is caruncle, it is the outgrowth of the integument towards micropyle of ovule. It's found in castor, and does it have any role to play, any important function? Yes. The caruncle acts like an absorbing pad for absorbing water. It will absorb the water and this will swell up, and this helps in, it will degenerate, and that is how the entry of the water takes place inside the ovule and the seed can germinate. Apart from this, it is also nutrition for the ants, and many a times ants get attracted to castor seeds and carry them away. So that is a kind of dispersal by ants. The seeds get dispersed by ants. So castor seeds dispersed by ant, we can use a term for that. It is called myrmecochory. We can use a word called myrmecochory for that. So ants, it is basically ants dispersing the seeds. So caruncle, otherwise, as you know, apart from this, castor is already a very well known and most important, economically important seed, because it provides us oil, lubricant oil. Castor gives us the lubricant oil. Coming to endothelium, endothelium is a term associated with the ovule, where we even call it as integumentary tapetum. Endothelium is also called as integumentary tapetum. What does it mean? It is the inner layer of the integument which gives nutrition, and it is compared with the tapetum, which is innermost layer of the anther wall. So sometimes we call this endothelium as integumentary tapetum in ovules. So we have summarized all these points, that is tenunucellate, racenucellate related to nucellus, then unitegmic, bitegmic, ategmic, tritegmic related to the integument, these terms, even caruncle and endothelium. So these all are terms related to ovules. Moving further to a very important part of this topic, that is megasporogenesis. Just like you study the microsporogenesis, this is the formation of the microspores. Megasporogenesis is nothing but the formation of megaspores. Now in megaspore formation, first it begins like this, that this is the ovule micropylar part only I am showing, and there's one hypodermal cell. You remember hypodermal, that is the layer just below epidermal. So the layer next to epidermal towards micropyle is hypodermal, and from that hypodermal there's only one cell from the hypodermal layer, one cell towards micropyle. So it is a hypodermal cell that becomes a megaspore mother cell among nucellus, and this cell is coming from where? This cell is nothing but a nucellar cell. So you can even write in your notes that it is a hypodermal nucellar cell towards micropyle, which develops as a megaspore mother cell, and it's surrounded by callose. So once it gets surrounded by callose, it is delimited or separated from the rest of the nucellus tissue. So you can see that how this mega SMC is formed. In some ovules, it can be one division, one mitosis, and there can be two cells, one outer parietal and inner sporogenous cell. So it is the inner cell which becomes as a mega SMC. But in some ovules, it can be directly the hypodermal cell acting as a mega SMC. So this part should be very clear in your mind, that what is the mega SMC, and it is the last cell which is diploid. Inside this ovule, right now all the cells were diploid, they are still diploid, but once mega SMC undergoes meiosis, as you know, this is what is megasporogenesis. The megaspore mother cell will undergo meiosis. So once it undergoes meiosis, you find there is a megaspore tetrad formation, and the ploidy has now turned N, haploid. So now the megaspores are in a tetrad, and you know it's a linear tetrad formed. Out of this linear tetrad of megaspore, usually only one survives. Now which one survives? The one towards chalaza. The one towards chalaza survives, and the three towards micropyle degenerate. Any reason for that? Yes, because the megaspore finds the maximum nutrition towards chalaza because the nucellus is all inside. So since nucellus is here, so chalazal megaspore survives. And let us understand one thing, that this haploid megaspore will give rise to the future female gametophyte, which is called as embryo sac. So we'll discuss the types of embryo sacs briefly here with more detailed embryo sac formation in the next class. So what is this embryo sac formation? This embryo sac is that one megaspore, if this one forms, only one functional megaspore forms the embryo sac, we call it as monosporic. I have written here. So it is called as monosporic, and the most common and usual type of embryo sac is monosporic. For example, polygonum, the one which is mentioned in your NCERT, polygonum type is monosporic. In fact, this is the one which you also study in the further class. It is called a 7-celled 8-nucleate embryo sac. But it's not just polygonum, even Oenothera is also monosporic. Oenothera is also monosporic, though it is 4-celled 4-nucleate embryo sac. I'll discuss briefly in the next class about this. And bisporic, tetrasporic, also what are these? Now sometimes the two chalazal may survive and the two towards micropyle megaspores may degenerate. In that case, when the two chalazal megaspores give rise to the embryo sac, you may call this as bisporic. And there are examples for this which are mentioned in your notes, like allium, endymion, like that. And tetrasporic is when there are all four surviving. These all four megaspore, that means the entire tetrad survives and gives rise to a kind of embryo sac. All the embryo sacs are different. So in case of tetrasporic, it can be like this plumbago, fritillaria, the different types which are there, but these all types are going to be different. So we don't go into these details as these are not mentioned in your NCERT, but at least you should have a thorough idea that yes, there are different kinds of embryo sac developments. It can be in angiosperm, it can be monosporic, bisporic or tetrasporic. Whereas in gymnosperms, we mainly discussed about female gametophyte. If you just do on a comparison basis, we discussed about a female gametophyte. It was not embryo sac. Moreover, in gymnosperm, the female gametophytes had archegonia, the female sex organ, which has completely vanished in embryo sac, in angiosperms. So you don't find any embryo, archegonia or the female sex organ in the angiosperm. And this is advancement, as you know. This is an advancement. So these all types of embryo sac, out of which you are supposed to be studying the polygonum 7-celled 8-nucleate embryo sac, and this we will cover in the next class. Thank you.